Star Wars Outlaw comes out to what I would say a lukewarm reception, more of a Kashyyyk than a Tatooine, but now after playing the game for myself, I have came to a Yevon 4 conclusion, and I think Ubisoft have given up with this one as it's feeling pretty outdated in parts. However, it does still have its Hoth moments.
This is where the fun begins.
And if you didn't get any of them puns, you're gonna have to watch the whole video. Let's start with the original worries we had for this game, and if you haven't, make sure to check that video out. I'll wait for you. Let me just pause this for a minute. You watched it? Okay, let's begin. Let's start with the biggest worry. One of the biggest worries being that it was developed by Ubisoft. One of the biggest worries leading up to the release of Star Wars Outlaw surprisingly wasn't that the main character of the game was called Kay Vass. And even though every time I heard her name I heard, "It's easy, okay." Instead, it was Ubisoft, the developer of the mediocre, the engineer of the okayish, the C-3PO of the game industry, was making the first apparent open world Star Wars game. And with that, I have played about halfway through, maybe around 15 to 10-15 hours. Oh, over halfway then, because I think it's meant to be a 20-hour game, but I've done a bit of side missions. I'm about halfway through, and yeah, it's time to mumble about it. Welcome back to the Mumbling Gamer. On today's mumble, we'll be mumbling about Star Wars Outlaw, so strap in for that hyperspeed as we review Star Wars Outlaw. And when you're there, make sure to subscribe and like for future mumbles. Warning, some minor spoilers ahead for the following.
Or do not. There is no try.
The story of the Star Wars Outlaw was surprisingly one of the best bits. It did kind of lose itself at some elements as soon as we kind of stepped away from the gang's focus to the heist focus. It kind of lost its way. In simple ways, Star Wars Outlaw's story is straightforward. Is a rogue thief trying to live in the underworld of the Star Wars universe. She robs the wrong person, then Wookie's your uncle. That is the story. It's pretty good until we step away from the good elements, these being the gangs. When the rogue Kay goes from doing dodgy deals with the gangs to creating her own crew to go on a heist, there's no surprise that that massive tonal shift kind of changes the story and it goes massively downhill. And are you ready to go on the most worrying heist of the galaxy? Before this, already Outlaw was souring than grapes.
What you got there, sour grapes? You got a grip of sour grapes. Ooh.
With flashback scenes and the involvement of the Rebel Alliance, and done with every hero type being part of the Rebels in some way or another. Stormtroopers though, I could kill them for days, but the Rebels can go suck a hyperdrive. But don't think about that. Look at the little cute thing, and the very cool robot I wish I was playing as.
Who are you?
Run.
I look at this story and struggle to know if I think it's better than the Jedi Survivor story. I think they really have the same value, but the Jedi series is further developed through this sequel. Character-wise, if you watch the Worried About, you might already know my favourite one out of these two. Out of Kai and Kel? Out of Kay? No. out of Vass and Kyle. Cal. Jesus, Kay and Cal. Well, anyway, my favourite character is obviously Kay Vass. If you watch that Worried About, I am not the biggest fan of Cal Caster, that's his last name. Kay is very much better character overall than Cal Caster.
I don't trust anyone.
Not even me? That's fair.
I just don't need another Jedi who's dealing with the post-traumatic stress of losing his master from the Clone Wars. I just don't. I didn't really need to find out about Vass finding her rodent jacket and how she picks pockets. It started to feel really Han Solo prequel movie, and you never go full solo. And then to end the story without really spoiling anything, it kind of is a letdown, I would say. I would say it was very close to what was already happening in Star Wars Jedi Survivor, or whatever that series is called, as we go back to the original Star Wars, the Rebels versus the Empire, and I'm getting bored of that. A lot of elements mirror it. I'm not spoiling it, but they mirror it, okay? They mirror that to mirrored. It's mirrored. At the end, it always doesn't have to be the Empire versus the Rebels, even though that is the name of the game or the films. It's Star Wars. It's not Star Gangs Wars, I suppose. But to me, I would have wanted something a bit more gang related to the end, even though it is slightly gang related, but it's also the Empire and the Rebels cannot coexist. And that's the ending. Like every other Star Wars thing, it feels like this could have been something that would have been different, like gangs, warfare, and stuff like that.
Something dark side.
I feel like I went into this game with low expectations and it kind of made it even lower. You're buying a Ubisoft game, you don't expect the next GTA or Witcher. It's easily that Ubisoft are the guilty pleasure of the video game industry. It's like watching Below Decks. You're at episode 1 on the charter, you don't care what happens between the chef and the steward, but after 6 episodes, you're way too deep to give up. Ubisoft games are the Below Decks of the industry, and Star Wars Outlaw is a spin-off of Below Decks as it's using the same formula, but missing the same hook. Talking about decks though, somehow, even though this game is majorly average, the high stake, the A+ of this game is maybe the card game, as I played the card game probably way too much. This is why I'm confused of how far I'm actually in this game, because I played this card game a lot. I'd played this card game in person. They should have released this card game alongside the game because I would have bought it. It's quite fun. I think your whole goal is to try and get the lowest possible score to 0. This means that you get 2 cards. Why am I explaining the rules? Anyway, you try and get 2 cards. Both of these cards are either the yellow one, I think it's sand, and the red one is blood. And you have to minus 1 card from the other and try and get the lowest possible score to 0. It's good. I'd play it. It's quite an interesting game. I kind of wish and kind of hope that somehow these like mini games of Star Wars try and go into other games. Right, where was I? Below Decks, gameplay. When you look at the game, you really expect like Assassin's Creed style of gameplay. With Force kind of sneaky rogue going through the Star Wars galaxy, you quickly realise this is a Watch Dogs clone. And well, none of them games feel that good. Making, well, Star Wars Outlaw gameplay not really that good. I think maybe even below average. If I took my glasses off and played this game, with the Star Wars skin disappeared, I could easily be in London hacking stuff. But instead of hacking, I have this theory thing that does the kind of hacking for me. Thinking about that, Watch Dogs Legion had a whole focus on gangs as well, so it feels like even more this game is a Watch Dogs clone.
Order without question. We modify.
At least Star Wars Jedi Survivor and stuff cloned Dark Souls, a great game, and not Watch Dogs. A okay-ish franchise, I suppose. It just feels like this is the overarching problem. Everything is kind of basic. The gunplay is good, but it's nowhere near great. It's maybe one of the most basic kind of third-person shooters ever that keeps that decent standard of video game, what you could play to the end, but it's nothing great about it. Nothing pops up as being fantastic. Even the story is sadly basic. And it's kind of weird. And then when something does pop up, like, oh, I can use a speeder in this game, that could be exciting. It just brings it down to that standard of being, well, basic and standard. That standard is here. The new thing pops up, tries to break through, and it just doesn't. And then somehow the game just knocks it down, but would be something basic as gunplay on a bike. Then you think maybe it would have some guns, with maybe a drawback being that you can only shoot forward and not behind, even though she does have a holster. No, instead, every speeder battle goes more like that Ondor battle that even feels weird watching now, that you don't use the speeder guns. We're in a shooter, right? Does Kay forgets how to shoot for some reason and needs adrenaline to shoot from her bike. Maybe I'm focusing a bit too much on this bike stuff, but with the average gunplay, it feels like bike play could have added something to this game. Maybe we fight a wide range of different Star Wars vehicles. I literally jumped on my speeder for the first time and tried to shoot something, but couldn't, and it felt off. They even have them very cool transport vehicles for the stormtroopers that we never fight. They also have AT-ATs and other stuff like that, but you can't fight them on the speeder. And I swear there was an interview with the developer saying that they didn't want to overpower her with the speeder and the gun, but it's like, you have these vehicles to fight, and I don't think MK on a speeder is going to outclass these other vehicles. And that could have been interesting, but we didn't get anything like that. We just literally got a glorified horse, what nullifies our guns. So yeah, that wasn't the greatest element. Really took you out of this. Why can't I just use my gun all the time? Why do I have to have this bar go up to use it? It made no sense. Then we have the space play, or the space combat play, whatever it's called, and I'm personally never really a fan of combat in space. It's always the same. It's black space, empty space. You fly around, you asteroids, you have your blown up ships, and you do that weird little shooting thing where you try to shoot the dart and it shoots the thing. It never excites me. So if you are excited, I'd say this is okay. It's better than Starfield. Do you remember Starfield? Do you remember this? Do you remember this load screen? At least you can land on planets in this game. Let me just tell you that. But for space play, I think that's really up to you. If you like space play, I think you would like this. This is a good Star Wars experience, even though it's a basic Star Wars experience, if you get what I mean. Even the space play, I wouldn't say there's anything groundbreaking here. You just go through, you shoot things in space, and it has that Star Wars element to it. Everything has that Star Wars element to it in this game. What makes you do kind of feel like a rogue, but it's just like everything, nothing kind of elevates it. They're going for that baseline, I think. If you look at the sales, that baseline was not enough. The gameplay just feels slightly outdated, missing core elements of games that we have seen Ubisoft make over the years. Ubisoft have basically been making stealth games for years and years, and some of them are good, but what the hell was this? It was as basic as a blue lightsaber. Nothing made me want to go into stealthy mode when I can just shoot my way out of it. Maybe later games unless I'm forced to. And the 4 stealth elements on it, there's nothing different. There's just, you sometimes press something to move and you're forced to do it more often than I thought you would have been able to. You can still take down enemies when you're doing it, but I don't think they have very good AI to find a body or anything. I haven't tried to do it, but I'm not even sure they're past cross. It's not even giving Assassin's Creed vibes. I can't remember the stealth in Watch Dogs Legion, the latest Watch Dogs game, but I swear it was better. I really think it was better than this, because somehow they've downgraded from that. Maybe I'm rose-tinted glasses for the latest Watch Dogs because it was in London and I love the mechanic, but I swear that stealth mechanic in them games were better than this game. Everything just felt as basic as blue milk on a Sunday afternoon. It's like the stealth is a D, the gunplay is a D, the speeder play is an F, and the space play is an I don't care. An IDC, and I don't care. After playing this game that feels like across the board, it's just kind of outdated. It feels like it could have been improved, but it was inspired by an already outdated systems, what Ubisoft have been running on for a very long time. If you play Watch Dogs, any of this series really, it's very outdated. Assassin's Creed may be elevating it a bit. It has a lot of different mechanics going for it, what other things don't do, but still, after playing that for so long, it still feels slightly outdated, and that could be just a Ubisoft thing, because I do think Ubisoft's slogan really should be quantity over quality, and they could run off that for years, as they have been releasing them type of games for ages. It's like Assassin's Creed Valhalla had a lot of quantity, but not much quality. It just had the Viking skin on it, what made it worth playing, because I played a lot of that game. But still, you look back at what you've kind of been doing, or you go up against a boss in that game, and it still feels slightly outdated. It's not smooth, it's not fluid, apart from the parkour, what they've somehow mastered forever, apart from this game. What is just a dulled down, Uncharted type climbing mechanic. What is kind of really terrible, there's kind of a lot of climbing in this game. I don't know if there was climbing in like a Watch Dogs game, but if there was, it feels like it would be like this. Then before we go full blown into this kind of honor system between the gangs, what were these? What were these minigames? Why were these minigames here? What were these games doing here? Why? They're worse than Spider-Man. Are they worse than Spider-Man? Yes. Yes, they are. I hated this one the most. The other one, alright. But it does feel like sometimes when they introduce hacking and doing that kind of stuff, I don't think it's as easy as doing a Wordle. Apparently it's a Wordle. I read that it's a Wordle. I don't play Wordle. Now we have a rhythm game. Why? Why? Spider-Man didn't need them, and Star Wars Outlaw does not need them.
You failed, Your Highness. I am a Jedi.
And if the theme for this game wasn't average, the honor system was a massive letdown for this game. As mentioned about the story, it really just kind of any other Star Wars story. We all know now that the rebels aren't all that good people and everything is grey, but there is still a bigger evil than this grey sort of evil, and having this honor system what's set between Star Wars gangs could have been very interesting, but it seems like it's set back by the rebels' inclusion. It clouds the story and kind of disconnects the story until the end. I think it would have been better, and I don't think this happens. I'm not that far. I'm like 10-15 hours into it. I could imagine if the rebels were classed as a gang, I think that would be better if they were classed as a gang and it interacted with them. So you had the Pikes, you had the Hutts, you had the Sunny in Philadelphia thing. I just got Sunny, I can't remember the name of it. And you have the Snow one, I can't remember that either. And then you have the rebels. Like, you had a distinct good gang. They're always kind of grey and evil now because politics. Maybe they could, didn't want to maybe include Empire, maybe would have been a bit too far. But I do think including the rebels as a gang, and maybe you don't know that they're 100% the rebels, the rebellion, I don't know. Or it's just a group, you know, it's not like the full-blown rebellion. It's not Princess Leia and stuff like that. It's like a fractured little gang type rebels, like kind of like that guy. Who's the guy? He's on the screen right now. This guy. He's a rebel amongst the rebels, and rebels don't like working with him. Kind of like that. And he could have made an appearance. I don't think he does. No, he might be dead. I'm not sure. Anyway, stuff like that would have been fun because there's so many splinter cells of rebels that it could have felt like a gang. They could have been doing stuff like a gang to kind of fight the Empire and other gangs to try and get territory or something like that. That could have been fun. And you could have chose between the rebels and the Hutts and everything like that, but instead, I think they kind of disappear for a while. It just kind of feels like we had this with Star Wars Jedi Survivor series, and it felt like it should have been different, but we ended up kind of the same way. It feels like gameplay-wise, we needed something more complex, to bridge that line a lot more between good and evil. Kay is just basically a good person. I think I just wanted more from this system. It's a decent system, but give me something that makes it affect the ending of the game or even the story throughout. Maybe it turns me into the leader of one of the gangs, or maybe it even makes my own gang and I become the leader of it or something like that. Or maybe Kay can die at the end. No, just give me something depending on my choices.
It just feels like it needed that extra force, the extra element, and I have a theory why we didn't get it. My theory is that these extra elements were in the dialogue, these extra options, as it felt like about an hour or two through, Kay was doing a lot of decisions very quickly and changing her mind, and it does feel like an option was there, but it was taken away and just given to you.
Half up front or no dice?
You'll get paid when you deliver.
That works too.
It feels like here that there was an option to agree or disagree, but Kay changes her mind really quickly. That made me think Kay was at one point was going to be a more complex character where she made decisions. The main decision instead being which gang side you pick instead of anything worthwhile. And really, when I saw the trailer for this decision system, I thought it would be harder to just walk into a gang territory. But instead, the Pikes liked me really quickly. Like Hook, Line and Pike. Get it? Because they're named after a pike, the fish. Yeah.
There's a lot that could have been done with this system, as not many games really have an honor system anymore. And it feels like they could be great for video games. It makes that world feel alive. That Red Dead Redemption 2 honor system, even though I don't know how much it affected that gameplay, it does add elements to it. It adds that you can't go into this area because people hate you. You can't buy stuff from this area because you've been shooting it up last week. And that adds to the world and makes you feel like this world is alive. It's surprising. It must be difficult to do as it's not in many games. And it's just terrible that when it is in a Star Wars Outlaw, it's just not that good. It did, and it does feel like there was going to be these extra elements at one point in this game, but it was stripped out for time. And that really asks the question, does Ubisoft really care?
Don't look like you're trying to keep your distance. I don't know. Fly casual.
Ubisoft games being outdated isn't a stop the presses kind of moment, it's old news, but when you look at the adaptations of franchises already established IPs, it feels on another level of outdated. We basically get a core idea that has become slightly stale, but Ubisoft adds that extra stamp, that little special sauce in a Viking, a samurai or a ninja, and then they have me really excited for the game. But then you give Ubisoft an IP, and it feels like due to the fact that money for this sales I think go back to the IP as well as them, that they lack slightly amount of time in the Vector tank and it turns into a kind of half-baked mess. And there's the fact also that they basically bring out a near copy of a flagship franchise they've made, sticking it with an IP. For another example of them doing this, Far Cry got the Avatar treatment, and Star Wars Outlaw isn't Assassin's Creed with a Star Wars skin, it's something much worse. I have told you the definition of Watch Dogs treatment, but instead of hacking we have a pet. I have made this joke before, but Ubisoft is literally the definition of insanity.
In summary, is this game good? Not really. I would say it's basic. Around nearly every corner it's basic. Even the story, what does elevate the game slightly, is kind of drawn back by that gameplay. And I do truly think with everything you kind of see through this game, if every element, every kind of thing was refined, pushed up, to that just extra level, to that maybe even like Assassin's Creed type level, instead it's like a Watch Dogs type level. The story was good, it's probably the best part of the game, but apart from that, the gameplay brought this game so low, it made it feel so basic. And I think if they elevated that gameplay to at least current Assassin's Creed kind of levels, it would have been maybe one of the best games of the year with that Star Wars element added. But instead we got a Watch Dogs feeling game. It doesn't really hook you into the game at all, it just doesn't. Jedi Survivor hooked you with the story, what was kind of up developing, you were a Jedi, even though we have saw this so many times before, being that Jedi who is confused after it. It was exciting to play, and the story, I think the story there kind of pushed it forward, as the gameplay wasn't great, but the story moved that forward so well, and it had help obviously from having a sequel what developed that story massively. But does it make you feel like a rogue of the Star Wars galaxy, a thief, a heister, a whatever? Yes, I think it does, and that's what this game set out to be. If you like Star Wars, if you want to be a Han Solo type, this game was probably for you. I saw a lot of comments saying that they wish they could pick between a female and a male, but that happened in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and the female character was the best character, and it felt like this would have been the same, as everyone would have been comparing the male to Han Solo, and it would have been not as good. And Kyle Vass is such a good character. She's funny, she kind of goes through a lot, and it's just kind of exciting to see what she does next. And that is probably one of the best elements of this game, the story mixed with that character. And I'd love to see it develop into a next game, but that gameplay needs to be something better. It has to be elevated, especially if you look at the apparent sales of this game. It's not doing that well. But to be fair, Ubisoft had a lot of spinning plates with this game, as there is a lot of different elements. So that's it for this mumble. What do you think of this game? Comment below, like and subscribe, and remember, if you want to support the channel, you can visit our Patreon. We are working, well, I'm working on a lot of different elements there and a new exclusive show. So remember to like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next mumble.